Have you ever stopped and wondered when our world really became, well, modern? We're talking about the moment the planet got a massive software and hardware upgrade. Well, that's what we're diving into today, the Second Industrial Revolution. It's this incredible period between 1870 and 1914 that pretty much laid the foundation for the life you and I live right now. To really get the scale of this, you have to appreciate just how dramatically the world was remade in just a single lifetime. Seriously, this wasn't just a slow evolution. It was a complete and total overhaul of society, technology, and, how money worked. And this slide right here, it says it all. I mean, look at the difference. In 1870, the world ran on steam and iron. If you wanted to send news, it literally traveled at the speed of a ship. By 1914, that world was just gone. In its place, you have a planet wired for instant communication, built from steel, powered by electricity, and all tied together in one giant global economy. So, what was the new hardware that was driving this massive global upgrade? Well, it really boiled down to three core innovations that completely changed what was possible for humanity: steel, chemicals, and the ultimate game changer, electricity. It all starts with steel. You see, before the 1850s, steel was super expensive and really hard to make. But then the Bessemer process came along, and it changed everything. It was this revolutionary new way to mass produce strong, reliable steel on the cheap for the very first time. And this is the key. You have to get this point. When a core building material suddenly becomes cheap, plentiful, and way, way better than what you had before, the world is just poised for a radical transformation. Iron built the first wave of industry. Steel was about to build the modern world. And you could just see the ripple effects everywhere. With all this cheap steel, you could suddenly build skyscrapers that scraped the heavens, bigger ships to rule the oceans, way more powerful weapons, and thousands of miles of railroad tracks to stitch entire continents together. The actual physical shape of our world was changing before people's eyes. So what was powering all this new stuff? Well, the age of steam was on its way out. This chart really shows the dramatic rise of two new kids on the block: electricity, which started lighting up cities and factories, and petroleum, which, well, once it was refined into gasoline, was about to put the entire world on wheels. Okay, so you've got the new materials, you've got the new power. The next frontier? Conquering distance. This era saw a fundamental collapse in the time it took to communicate and travel, which effectively just shrank the planet and connected all of humanity like never before. Just imagine this for a second. For the first time in all of human history, someone in London could get a message to New York almost instantly. The transatlantic telegraph cable was basically the 19th century internet. It linked the economies of the entire Atlantic world in real time, and it changed finance and trade forever. And this was happening on a national level, too. Railroads became the arteries of this new world. They'd haul raw materials from the countryside into big industrial cities, then carry the finished goods back out. And with new tech like refrigerated cars, you could even ship fresh food across the country, which totally changed people's diets and quality of life. Now, all of this incredible productivity from factories created a brand new kind of problem. I mean, you could make things faster and cheaper than anyone had ever dreamed. But that's only half the equation, right? Exactly. This explosion in mass production meant you had to create mass demand. And this challenge led to the birth of a totally new economic force, one that's absolutely central to our lives today: the modern consumer. And here's the feedback loop that got created. First, mass production makes a ton of extra stuff. So to sell all that stuff, you get the invention of the department store, which turns shopping from a chore into a fun activity. And then to get people into those stores, you get the advertising industry, whose entire job is to create desire and convince you that you need a specific brand. This cycle is still running the global economy today. But this new, supercharged global economy, it wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. It was volatile, it was prone to huge booms and busts, and it ran into some serious growing pains. You could call them the first major bugs in the new global operating system. And the biggest bug of all was the Long Depression. For more than 20 years, the global economy just kind of stagnated. A big part of the reason was the gold standard. Because all the money was backed by physical gold, there just wasn't enough currency to keep up with all the economic growth. Lending froze up, unemployment went through the roof. It was a really painful lesson in how boom and bust cycles work. So how did the world deal with this crisis? Well, two major strategies popped up. On the corporate side, big companies tried to just eliminate the competition by forming massive monopolies to control prices. At the same time, governments started ditching free trade and putting up protective tariffs, which are basically taxes on foreign goods, to protect their own new industries. And that strategy, the protective tariffs, it gives us a perfect case study. Let's take a look at how one nation used it to basically engineer its own rise into a global superpower. Germany. So before it was a unified Germany, the state of Prussia had these massive deposits of coal and iron, the perfect raw materials. But they also had a plan. They didn't just sit back and let industrialization happen to them. They guided it with a really clear strategy to build up their national power. Let's just walk through this for a second. It starts way back in 1834 with something called the Zollverein, a customs union that basically created a free trade zone for all the German states. That was the economic foundation. Then, in the 1870s, they adopted the ideas of this economist Friedrich List, using tariffs to protect their new industries from the British. And the result? By 1900, German industry was an absolute powerhouse, even beating Britain in some key areas. And this, right here, this was the big idea. Friedrich List argued that for a new nation to catch up, it couldn't just have free trade right away. It needed to temporarily shield its infant industries, like a baby, until they were strong enough to compete on the world stage. It's a foundational idea that nations are still debating and using today. So as we wrap this up, it's pretty clear this period was about so much more than just a bunch of inventions. It forged the economic systems, the global connections, the corporations, and even the international rivalries that would define the entire 20th century and, frankly, still define our world today. Which really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This revolution gave us the blueprint for the modern age, all this incredible technology and wealth, but it also hard-coded in new kinds of economic crises and global competition. So the question is, a century later, are we still running on this incredible, powerful, but sometimes really buggy operating system? That's definitely something to think about.